Hey, welcome back to the cybernetic communist conversation. I'm Yohanan Ben Zion, a voice crying out in the wilderness, crying out for a technological New Jerusalem. And that last phrase, emphasis on the technological, right? There is no point in trying to make use of the fruits of an AI takeoff, preferably a people's AI takeoff, as opposed to predominantly bourgeois AI takeoff of today, which is hastening the omnicide, hastening other negative effects like elitist cruelty. But there is no point in trying to make use of that AI takeoff and the fruits of it if you're going to use that to build some kind of naturally bourgeois, naturally conservative thing like a religious religious utopia. That's there is no religious utopia. Religion is by religious literalism, and God belief is by its nature a thing which makes ordinary people and workers believe that elites are should be in control. So there's no religious utopia. It's an oxymoron. And so, you say, well, you use this name, Yohanan Ben Zion, which pretty fairly clearly indicates some kind of religious reference. Well, okay. I mean, what pseudonym could I possibly have that would indicate a desire to see a utopian outcome in the wake of an AI takeoff that wouldn't use that kind of reference? This is baked into people's thinking and language to such a degree that there's really no other way to come up with a name like that. So, but it bears repeating that religious people, particularly Christians and Jews, are a bunch of fucking idiots, and you really shouldn't have religious literalism as being something too central to your thinking. I'm going to talk about this something I was reflecting on most recently. I've been studying Mondragon Corporation, which it's almost a little uncharitable to refer to this as a corporation. Mondragon. Mondragon is something that's pretty particular to Spain and France, and pretty particular to the Basque region, Basque culture. But it's nevertheless an incredible accomplishment. It's quite comprehensive, its effects in this part of Spain and France. Mostly Spain, mostly mountainous areas. It's a large-scale cooperative spanning many sectors, influencing many areas. There's a university, there's a tech center affiliated, and it's it's an irony that the most realized thing of this kind in the world, the most realized anarcho-syndicalist thing in the world, comes not from the specific people, Basque people, but from was housed within the country. That's in a top 3 worst offenders for creating a world where something like cooperatives would have been impossible. You should not look at industrialization and think that it was a natural thing for industrialization to be associated with private wealth. All right? That is an incredible mistake, and also a kind of any number of kind of unfortunate coincidences that have to occur for that to be the case, that private wealth holds so much sway over world affairs and in an industrialized world. And the top three offenders in really seeing that come to pass would be, of course, the United States Empire, the British Empire, and in a little further back, the Spanish Empire. The Spanish Empire set the stage for completely taking over the New World. There would be no Eurocentric paradigm, or this thing that's basically so much a co-evolve of that, the capitalistic paradigms, that they're the same thing, right? Eurocentrism and capitalism, kind of really it's just the same system. That wouldn't exist were it not for the Spanish Empire setting the stage for that and doing the preliminary work of creating this white supremacist and elitist world. Of course, it hasn't operated in that way to the present day, as the other two major offenders there, the British Empire and U.S. Empire, have done. But this world where organizations that happen to be housed in Spain, like Mondragon, would have been dominant, was prevented by the Spanish Empire to a very high degree. And it's prevented overwhelmingly today by the U.S. Empire. It's unquestionably the case. The U.S. Empire has been the ringleader of anti-communism. That's to say, just attacking any formation in the world where there's a couple of dozen, like teachers or labor organizers, more than a couple dozen. Anywhere in the world where there's a possibility of some sector not being completely, having its resources completely extracted by a U.S. or European corporation, and they would just be attacked by the United States in a proxy war. The United States is killed in domestic genocides and actions of violence, in anti-communist wars and wars of theft and proxy wars. In its history, it's killed 300 million people. Hundreds of millions of people, at the very least. And you can't really point to anyone else that has that kind of influence today that's done that. The UK is a close honorable mention there. But you can't really point. You wouldn't even say if Nazi Germany had existed for 280 years, if they would have accomplished such a thing, right? They probably would have. But the United States actually exists and has done those things. So, it's absurd to hear people talking about fascism who have not this mandate of clearly and specifically opposing private wealth, who are not willing to fight to abolish private wealth. So you have liberals and left liberals, people who have not that interest, who are not actually leftists, who do not want to abolish. The leftist is someone who opposes private wealth. A rightist is someone who upholds private wealth. So most generally, when people in the U.S. are referring to a leftist, they're using kind of a shortened form of, like, the left wing of fascism. Which is just why. Think about what that says about you. That the thing that really pops out in your mind when you're talking about a person who's the left wing of fascism is not the fact that they're a fucking fascist or something very like a fascist, but that they are the left part of that unsustainable, omnicidal, elitist, cruel, murderous thing. What does that say about you? That says that you are not a serious person. Right? But you won't find an American, you won't find it. It's one in 1,000 European descended people on the North American continent, of whom you would say that they're not just completely insane. This United States Empire has just committed so many murders. and continues to be at the center of all of this in ways that these other empires that set the stage for all of this, in ways that the United States couldn't have because it didn't exist at that time, um, um, and now don't have quite that central of a role. Although the UK really, when you're talking about Western Europe, you're just, it's like saying, well, Israel and the U.S. are a separate problem. Oh no, my friend, Israel's a part of the United States. It's just a part of the United States that's kind of a guy wearing a weird fucking religious costume. It's just a military-industrial complex. It's just wearing a stupid fucking costume. That's still the military-industrial complex. It's in no way distinct, right? I've read about a half a dozen books specific to the Zionist project, which of course is very bad in any form. But it describes what Zionists were doing before the mid-20th century. And mostly, in a few words, what was happening here is people saying, well, we're going to find a place to go. We'll buy some land. We'll buy the land. We're maybe leaning towards, it seems like we're leaning towards Palestine, so we'll buy land there. We'll try to get along with the other governments there. We'll try to get along with the Ottoman Empire, which still existed for most of this conversation. That's not what happened, right? So what's the difference between just buying some stuff to have a place where you can live in peace and murdering in waves and waves millions of Palestinians? Well, this is this thing that makes Israel not sufficiently distinct from the United States military-industrial complex. It's becoming integrated in that. It's becoming its major feature being its military-client relationship with the United States. And so, you would say the same thing of Europe, right? Oh, well, France, it's a beautiful left liberal place. It's killed more potentates and heads of state in Africa than anybody, right? So even Spain, Spain is still metropole, right? It's still benefited from this Eurocentric paradigm. It just hasn't been as directly involved, but it's still involved, right? And of the UK and Germany and France, you would just say that it's also like Israel for in terms of criminal activity. This truly criminal activity, not generally defined as such, it's just it's really indistinguishable from the thing that's just so closely tailing the U.S. MIC as to be unmeaningful as to make a distinction there. So it's really interesting. I'm not an anarcho-syndicalist, but you can see at that moment where industrialization was on the horizon, and where the Spanish Empire and mercantilism were dominant, and the cementing of this Eurocentric paradigm through tremendous violence, right? If you're a person who doesn't see the Christian religion specifically as violent, even if you're not looking at the United States, basically a Christian fascist country that's killing the planet, if you look at the Spanish Empire and you don't see that that was violence, my God, what are you thinking? Okay, so it was a different kind of thing. It was focused more on conversion than settler colonialism, but tremendous amount of violence was done there. A tremendous amount of violence. There's this thing that you've seen a dozen times in films where there's a tiered temple, a pyramid in Mesoamerica, and there's a priest, and the priest says, "We want rain. We got to make sure it's going to rain, so we're going to execute this guy. We're going to kill this guy, a beautiful Vestal Virgin or whatever." And you've seen that movie, right? That never happened. There's no evidence of that. The thing that actually did happen in that context was conquistadors going up on top of that tier temple and saying, because you haven't given us enough gold, or whatever, you haven't satisfied other stupid religious conditions that we've set forth, we're going to execute somebody in that way. And somehow, in the popular imagination, that thing, which happened a number of times, became associated with the violence of the subaltern group. Not something, just the concept of cannibalism, right? All of the kind of cannibalistic activity that was done in those contexts was really done by Europeans. And is somehow switched over. Or scalping. That's a good one, right? There was no scalping as a common practice among Native American people in North America. All the scalping was done by Europeans. But the crimes of the Eurocentric paradigm are somehow transmuted into things associated with the subaltern group. It's utter fucking insanity. There's almost nothing that you can say of history as people most generally understand it, kind of public imagination as it congeals, that is true, that is remotely true. It's this titled this Mondragon. Again, that's a reference to the Mondragon Corporation, which is it is a corporation in the looser sense of the word, but it's not a thing operating in the same way because it's cooperatively owned. And then in the kind of greatest of ironies, the Spanish Empire is a major force for seeing that the whole of industrialization and development did not operate on this principle. And it very could have, it's a coin flip, really, right? If the settler colonial paradigm, if this Eurocentric paradigm, if this proto-capitalistic paradigm had not been in place and industrialization had started to occur, it almost certainly, like, why were people compelled to work for just one rich jerk? Like, why did they why does anybody put up with that now? But why at this kind of crucial stage of early industrialization was that the situation? Well, the stage had been set by conquistadors going to the top of the pyramid, cutting somebody's fucking head off for no reason, by all of these thousands and thousands of crimes committed principally by instruments of the Spanish Empire and British Empire, and in the 19th and 20th and 21st centuries, the U.S. Empire. This is called this cybernetic communism conversation. So I'm going to talk more about scientific communism, cybernetic communism, and this thing, anarcho-syndicalism today. What's wrong with being an anarcho-syndicalist? It seems like I've done some apologism here for anarcho-syndicalism. Why is that not the preferred set of strategies and actions relative to the scientific communist? Well, in a word, it's because it's not focused enough on actually ending the true source of the ravages of the ages, which is the operations of private wealth. A person who is an anarcho-syndicalist, or any anarchist or libertarian type person, which is not even a real thing, to the right of them is a person who can be manipulated by the forces of financial capital, the forces of empire, the forces of private wealth to prevent them from taking the kind of actions that would bring an end to this elitism and cruelty and unsustainability. And this is kind of been pretty well in evidence by the fact that you kind of maybe never heard of Mondragon, right? You kind of never maybe heard very much about the most significant foray into anarcho-syndicalism, which is also in Spain. The Spanish indicated by the Spanish Civil War. Excuse me. Franco defeating anarcho-syndicalists, basically. So that's a one foray, or maybe two forays. Spanish anarcho-syndicalists becoming state actors, and then being defeated by fascists, and Mondragon. Those are the two forays into larger scale anarcho-syndicalism. The forays into state socialism are more expansive. And again, that could be attributed to this kind of bad luck of imperialist, proto-capitalist, and Eurocentric forces kind of setting the stage for humans not having an easy way to avoid private wealth becoming dominant over cooperation generally, in the way that I described. But, if things were different, they wouldn't be the same. It's not that interesting to say. We have to live in the world as it is. And in the world as it is, state socialism is a thing which has more significantly defeated and challenged the forces of private wealth, and that effect of people, anyone with this anarcho prefix in front of their name, being too focused on the state and not distinguishing between a bourgeois state and a people's government, and thus not being in a position to adequately challenge private wealth, the source of these many miseries. That's a problem. But nevertheless, you can learn an awful lot from reading books about these folks. I've recommended Alexander Berkman's book on, he's been dead for a long time, Alexander Berkman's book on anarcho-communism for an awful lot. And I recommend other books, serious works to do with anarcho-communism or anarcho-syndicalism. But really, the better use of your time, if you haven't read kind of canonical scientific communist works, and works more specific to proletarian philosophy, you need to read those first. You got to read a lot more books before you start just kind of getting creative with stuff. So how does scientific communists and proletarian philosophy, what does that really have to do with advanced technology or advanced computing? In some people's mind, people who I credit, it doesn't, right? I meet people online who say, hey Ben, fuck you. Fuck robots, fuck computers, and fuck you especially. But they're scientific communists. They are focused on building a cadre to end the ravages of empire and private wealth. And to them I say, well, thank you, sir, may I have another? Because they are doing the right thing, right? But you must understand that advanced computing particularly is the most powerful revolutionary weapon. It has the most powerful potential. It's the most powerful weapon, has the most revolutionary potential there of anything that's ever existed. This is just the possibility of an AI agent being endlessly replicated that's able to do the work of a person. That's not something that's ever existed before very recent years. And so building this into something proletarian, something massified, it should be a no-brainer for you to see the, especially maybe if you're the person who says, hey, fuck you, Ben, fuck robots, fuck you. I assume if you have the temerity to say such a thing, that's because you already secretly have millions of soldiers at the, waiting to storm Washington, D.C. and end the U.S. MIC and end the homicide, right? Do you have millions of soldiers ready to do that? I don't know if that person exists. I don't know if that formation exists. So we have 5 years left, according to the most credible climate scientists, before we reach a period of human history characterized by runaway overheating. This is a direct result of this U.S. Being the ringleader of anti-communism. It's a direct result of the U.S. MIC, $1 trillion a year super polluting abomination, whose only real job on the world stage is to protect other super polluting abominations, corporations particularly, petrochemical corporations and livestock system corporations particularly, and will do great violence. You just go to Indonesia and start hiring right-wing death squads to kill teachers, as is described in a great book, the Jakarta Method, which if you haven't read, you must read. Many, many, many other books describing this CIA-run world, an utter fucking just hellspawn. There's no. There's, you know, what we say? Well, what's worse, the Spanish Empire, the British Empire, the U.S. Empire? Well, the U.S. Empire has committed its crimes in this time frame where we've gone from having a livable biosphere and no prospect of an unlivable biosphere to being 5 years away from runaway overheating, killing billions, if not all. Because of this $1 trillion a year MIC, because of this global mafia that is the United States government and CIA-run world, not allowing anyone to even start to color out of the lines a little bit, so far as private wealth is concerned. Like a couple of teachers, boom, gone. Anywhere in the world. Anywhere in the world. A couple of trade unionists, boom, gone. These people might not even like communists. They might not even have any conception of what communism is. But they'll fucking kill them. You better believe they'll kill them. It's the United States. So, you know, when you say the United States killed hundreds of millions of people in its history, those, at any point, those deaths were terrible, terrible crimes. But in this context of just cementing this far-right neoliberal, neoconservative, imperialist, and anti-communist paradigms, the CIA-run world in place, the crimes are off the chart, right? It's a crime of just killing everyone and making it so that none of this has ever happened, right? If everyone dies, it's as if none of this has ever happened, and you wouldn't have even conceived of such a thing before very recent years because of the U.S. military-industrial complex, pretty particularly. How does that relate really to advanced computing? Well, advanced computing is a thing that the studies have indicated that if 3% of people in a given country are well organized and as a cadre, well organized people willing to fight for a humane and sustainable world, that country will tend to then become proletarian. 3% is a big number, right? Because the number in the U.S. is like 0.1%. But with this intelligence explosion, we could say an advanced computing takeoff, this AI agents, for example, being endlessly replicatable, the potential of them being massified, that brings the number down. That brings the number down. And unlike the studies that say that can pretty confidently say 3% is a good number, and it's not unreasonable to say 3% is a good number, right? The Cuban Revolution was just 80 people in a leaky boat at first, and 50 people in a leaking boat. Other revolutions started similarly, just a few people. Those were not things the project of dismantling the U.S. military-industrial complex, which more or less requires the dismantling of the U.S. government as you understand it. That's not something that can unfortunately necessarily be undertaken by 50 people in a leaky boat. But so this the most important thing that you would say, I think perhaps, of our time is that the best scientific communist, with giving this ticking time bomb of 5 years before runaway overheating, it would be a cybernetic communist. And the number that would be required maybe could go down from 3% to maybe 0.5%, assuming a pretty substantial effect by things like the Vanguard Network that I've worked on, or some kind of massified advanced computing formation. And the idea is basically this. It's not too complicated. AI agents can serve as kind of proxies for yourself, doing work on your behalf. You can set them up quite easily on your computer so that they can be working in your stead while you're sleeping, or doing your other job, or just doing whatever the hell you want to do. So that in short order, if not today, 1 hour of work on your behalf could translate into 70 agent hours done on, say, some public works project, or a more ambitious project, such as the building of direct digital democracy, provisioning universal basic services to all, and stopping the capitalist climate apocalypse. These are the main jobs of such things, I would think. And so when you have even small thousands of AI agents, you individually being able to translate 1 hour of work into 70 hours of work that the AI agent does on your behalf, as an individualistic phenomenon, that's not too interesting, right? It could put sushi money in your pocket, let you play video games more, but that's not that interesting. But if that thing becomes massified, even in the small thousands, but operating at a high level, that becomes something of real interest. And as that number grows, the workforce multiplication there kind of goes off the charts. Right? It becomes a thing that's capable of undertaking projects that we can't even really conceive of right now. Or at the very least, you could say in the small millions, this thing, an interlocking number of AI agent-centered work groups, basically operating as a proxy hive mind, as opposed to a true hive mind. A true hive mind would be you having something micro-surgically implanted into your head, perhaps, or wearing a special hat that doesn't exist yet, but would allow you to basically do the same thing. A brain-computer interface of a sophistication that would allow you to work in a very sophisticated way with other human beings. That might not be your dream job, right? To become kind of a potted plant or something, but a superpowered potted plant. That might not really be your dream job. I understand that that's not everyone's dream job. So the true hive mind could easily be replaced with the proxy hive mind, where AI agents, your digital doppelganger, or your collection of digital doppelgangers, are able to do that while you go about living an ordinary human life, not having a brain-computer interface on your head all the time. The effect is really much the same, right? If a whole group of AI agents operating on your behalf is able to do something, why should you have to have elective surgery? Why should you have to have something even as unpleasant as wearing a skull cap for any number of hours of the day? So this, you should think of this proxy hive mind as a genuinely revolutionary thing, as opposed to, say, the state of brain-computer interface technology, or in the U.S., such as in the Neuralink Corporation. There are people who are connected to one another in this true hive mind formation right now. There are 3 people in the otherly abled people in the Neuralink organization who have not superpowered abilities, but nevertheless, they're relative to their former capabilities as kind of people in a locked-in state. They have significant capabilities. But what are those 3 people doing? Well, they're all kind of just right as dumbasses. So they're not doing anything. They're not using this hive mind to any real end. And you can kind of go on their Twitters and see them talking about this. Well, we should be more powerful, but we're right as dumbasses, so we're not doing anything. But they don't admit that part. It's not a deal breaker for me. I've been interested in being part of a true hive mind for about as long as I can remember. But I also understand that people find that a little unsettling. You can look at the contours of the AI backlash today and understand that more clearly, but you don't really need a roadmap to understand that people find the idea of changing the human form to be a little unsettling. And so it's not really a deal breaker, right? That's why I started talking in terms of true hive mind and proxy hive mind, and also using these words like bourgeois AI takeoff and people's AI takeoff. You won't find AI safety people who make these distinctions, right? Because they're not, they are also just rightist dumbasses. They're rightist dumbasses who might have some technical prowess, or might have a bunch of letters behind their name that don't really mean that much. Just go to a graduate program that is of a bourgeois bent, and learn how to become to engage in high-level sophistry on behalf of bourgeois systems. That's not a real accomplishment. But some of these people do have legitimate understanding of the technical matters, or have done technical work. So I suppose that's of interest there. But generally speaking, this kind of class of AI hangers-on, techno-optimists, tech prognosticators, and tech obsessives, they're people who won't even break down the difference between a bourgeois AI takeoff hastening the death of the planet and the enslavement of humankind, and a people's AI takeoff, a thing perfectly safe. And so they talk about the lack of safety in the system, but they're not willing to reject the system that is a real underlying cause there. That's significant. I could talk more about the contours of this AI backlash. I was thinking of somebody, and I don't really want to call this person by name or identify them in any way, because this person is somebody who changed my thinking very much as anyone I've met in real life. Pretty specifically rejecting fascistic lines of thought, bourgeois lines of thought, and techno-fascistic, the state of this kind of bourgeois AI explosion today, rejecting it and understanding it in a more thoroughgoing way. But this person is kind of, in my mind, now become associated more with the kind of AI backlash rhetoric. Let's say a way of understanding this pretty concretely is talking about education, right? A person who says that AI has no place in education is a person who says that no one should be trained to do more with less. Is a person who says that no one should be making any moves away from this unsustainable bourgeois U.S. system. So their definition of success is then operating in that unsustainable system and maintaining the elitism and cruelty of that system but appearing to be respectable in that system. That's most people's definition of success and a good life in the United States. Like, fucking kill yourself. Like, it's respectfully fucking kill yourself if that's your thinking. That's the road you're on anyway. Like, it's not me doing some great violence to you to say that, because that's the path you're on. It's just you would just be doing it a couple of years before the U.S. empire does it for you because of this runaway overheating effect that it's caused. That it's 90% of the cause of, right? The United States is not solely responsible for all industrialization or all bourgeois industrialization, but this would have things would have been quite different, right? The best way, in my view, to think about the people's AI takeoff is to describe another scenario, maybe like this Mondragon dominant world, where the Spanish Empire and British Empire hadn't laid the groundwork for private wealth becoming so powerful. Another alternate history is talking pretty specifically about Salvador Allende, Chile, and the Cybersyn project. From roughly 1971 to 1973, or from precisely 1971 to 1973, Salvador Allende, working with some noted cyberneticians, including foundational cybernetician Stafford Beer, who was not a person laser-focused on the abolition of private wealth. He's, like most cyberneticians, a bourgeois character, like most systems theorists, somewhat of a bourgeois character. But he nevertheless understood that state socialism becoming integrated with a technological planned economy and more advanced cybernetic systems was of real interest to the cybernetician. So he set aside his garbage ideology to work on a project of note. Our ideology wasn't uniformly garbage, but it's fatally flawed. So this project would have easily been a springboard for people's superintelligence. Not the kind so specifically tied to existing machine learning disciplines that have emerged since, that I described moments ago in the Vanguard Network, or people's superintelligence as it could easily exist now, but nevertheless a springboard to an intelligence explosion, technological planned economy with the network computing systems which were coming into existence then would have led to it's an absurdity that U.S. tech is associated with some kind of technological progress, right? Because at every step they've taken one step forward and two steps back, and just kind of solidified their control of these sectors and called this progress. And people just say, "Oh, that's progress," Google kind of setting the stage for full global surveillance of everyone on behalf of extractive forces and omnicidal forces like the U.S. MIC. Oh, that's progress. Look, there's a couple of things that are kind of cool. You can go on Instagram and put a fucking funny mustache on your face. That's pretty neat. That's not technological progress. At every stage, they've sacrificed technological progress for bourgeois control of these sectors. And nothing really draws that in a sharper focus than the U.S. fascistic invasion of Chile and overthrowing a democratically elected scientific socialist, a Marxist leader. He's not a scientific communist, but just because he took power in this democratic way, the United States doesn't care about democracy, right? If the use just democracy is just a proxy for this extractive force and this Eurocentric abuse. and they don't care about democracy. They've never cared about democracy. They've undermined democracy so many times. It's not even practical to list the number of times. Even if you're just talking about countries, it's not a conversation we could have in the course of one podcast. If you're talking about specific instances, the number is practically incalculable. But none is perhaps a better example than Salvador Allende's Chile. Not because it's a worse crime of this kind. Nicaragua had already occurred almost 2 decades prior. Many crimes of this kind had occurred even before Nicaragua. The United States was already had this idea that the entirety of the New World was its backyard, and was acting in this way even before the era of anti-communism and state socialism and fascism as we understand it today, which the best definition really of fascism, if you're not going to because you can't let fascism be defined by people who are not actually anti-fascist, who are not for the abolition of private wealth. If you do that, you're just getting a nonsense definition of fascism. The best definition of fascism is extreme violence plus capitalism. It might be a little oversimplified in certain things, but it's a good enough definition to go by. And by that definition, the United States is handily the most successful fascist entity in history. Handily. And the best example is, of course, the most relevant to the true cadre, the cybernetic communist cadre, is, of course, Salvador Allende being overthrown, the Cybersyn project being brought to a stop. These early neoliberalism was the germ of this project was really the neoliberal dominant world, and they recognized that this technological planned economy would have spread to other South American countries, would have stabilized sectors insofar as actual human beings, workers, are concerned, would have stabilized the world. That's not good for private wealth. That's not good for the 1 in 1,000 people who genuinely benefit from financial capital and empire. So this was put to a stop. And you can really say of Cybersyn much the same thing of the U.S.'s role in the illegal disbanding of the Soviet Union, right? Because that network computing was coming into not just kind of limited use as it was in the 1970s. There was just barely computing systems at that time and networks at that time. But by the 1990s, by the late 80s and 90s, that was a thing that was in homes, was in many homes. And so that is why this then increasingly neoliberal and neoconservative dominant world prioritized the dismantling of the Soviet Union, because that same thing could have happened, would have happened. There's a vast body of work, of writing, describing a technological planned economy in the Soviet Union before Cybersyn was even on anyone's mind. The Ogash Project, a significant body of writing. But what it wasn't was greenlit by the authorities there at any time. But it would have come to pass as a matter of course as the world transitioned to network computing being central to sectors. Would have happened as a matter of course that any planned economy would have become a technological planned economy, and thus a springboard to people's superintelligence. So you can say that the U.S. pretty specifically held back an AI takeoff, the so-called AI singularity, by a number of decades by its actions. And so all of the people of tech today who talk about an AI singularity, which is a bourgeois term, I use it regularly, but it really is a bourgeois term because it would confuse things, like if people say AI takeoff versus a bourgeois AI takeoff. If it's just some kind of a magical event that you can't predict or understand, then you don't distinguish between bourgeois, thing controlled by owning class in a cruel way, and workers worker control of a thing. You don't distinguish between that because it's just a magical event, right? Who the fuck knows? Is any of this even real? I don't know. That's another thing that people like this like to say. Like to talk about the simulation theory. If you start making too much sense as it relates to proletarian philosophy in their presence, they'll say, well, maybe none of this is even real. Yeah, you gotta punch that guy in the fucking face. The guy who says that to you, you gotta punch him right in the fucking kiss. Oh boy. The United States empire is unquestionably a thing that has done tremendous damage to working people and to this project of using technology and advanced technology more sensibly, even in an even remotely sensible way. And that's the orientation of all of these people. All of these people who are today calling themselves AI singularitarians, say a very, very small number, and believe me, I tracked, and you know, he's making a list and checking it twice. I don't know everybody in the world, but everybody who's public facing, I can pretty reasonably say that that they are neoliberals, right? The same people, they have the same ideology as Kissinger, a person who started all of this in terms of ending the most realistic prospect for a technological planned economy a half a century ago, you know, like Eric Schmidt. You know, that's a good example of just this kind of ideology, right? This is a person who co-wrote a book about AI with Henry Kissinger. This is a person who shaped this surveillance abomination of Google into what it is, just this massive military client, just a part of the problem. You know, before that, people at Google would say, "Don't be evil." And we're trying to maybe do something disruptive. We don't want to be evil. That wasn't entirely in good faith, I'm saying that. But after Eric Schmidt, there was no case for saying that, and they stopped saying it, because at this point, it's just a part of the omnicide. It's a part of the military-industrial complex, the worst thing that's ever existed. And will you find technologists very much to the left of Eric Schmidt who are high profile? No, indeed, you will not. No, indeed, you will not. They're all basically neoliberals. So they're taking credit for technology, while what they have done is force everyone to take one step forward while really taking 2 steps back, so far as technology and sustainability and the real use of livable industrialization. And so yeah, what is a tech bro? It's just a fucking demon, right? What is a techno optimist in that context? It's not meaningful. Most of these people call themselves techno optimists. A lot of them will just openly call themselves AI singularitarians, and there is the internal logic of calling yourself an AI singularitarian. It can't be dismissed out of hand. But what you can dismiss out of hand is that these people are a part of the solution. As they say, they're a part of the problem. They're going to make this problem worse. They're going to what is technology doing right now? Well, what is AI? What is bourgeois AI doing right now? Every time you use it, it's gulping a gallon or more of water. Every time you use it, right? So it's contributing significantly to the problems of an unlivable world. The lack of potable water is a major problem for an unlivable world. It's contributing significantly to the problems more specific of runaway overheating. And you won't find a person who is a techie, who is public facing, who's really opposed to any of this, right? You just won't. They're bad. They're all bad people. But it's possible for any one of them to become a better person. It's possible for all of this to turn quite quickly from a bourgeois AI takeoff to a people's AI takeoff. But as it stands, This is an omnicidal force, and by and large, of little more interest than the AOL Time Warner merger. Right? The AI singularity might as well be an AI, just a merger of a couple of AI companies or something. It doesn't really affect anything for the better, and its influence is just devastating in other areas. But it could turn to a people's AI takeoff, and that's what we have to do. That's done by defying these kind of operations. Mark Zuckerberg has taken to using this term personal superintelligence. You can become empowered to undertake projects. You can be using 1 hour of labor and turning that into 70 hours of labor, or something. That's just the number that I use, but there's not personal superintelligence, right? You having more significant capabilities means nothing on a world that's still on track to be dead. So there is, however, the people's superintelligence, and that is building this massified workforce multiplier from this thing which we could build today and tomorrow, right now, in the way that I've described as proxy hive mind. That thing would not be thoroughly super intelligent, but these terms, artificial general intelligence, artificial superintelligence, like, what is that? Who cares? Who cares if a thing cannot fully approximate a human being? Like, why is that of interest? Why is you having a really cool artificial buddy like really interesting? The only thing of real interest in industrialization is betterment of the species. Like, it's a parlor trick, right? So the definition of superintelligence then correctly must become a thing dramatically more capable in the aggregate, and capable of doing the specific things that need doing, like ending the U.S. MIC enforced capitalist climate apocalypse and runaway overheating, which is about 5 years away. And that is not a unrealistic number, right? To say that after 5 years, many billions, if not all, of human beings will die, right? Because we're already basically in permanent breach of about 1.5 degrees of overheating, a number that we thought, that people thought, say, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, was many, many decades away, many decades beyond 2025. Now we're in breach of that. And we're moving very quickly toward 2 degrees. And when we're in breach of 2 degrees, then we're in that era of runaway overheating. It's not a joke, right? None of you are fucking taking it seriously. But it's not a joke. If you were taking it seriously, right, there would not be one brick standing upon another of the Pentagon. There would be thousands of people with AR-15s or Molotov cocktails swarming the Pentagon, swarming the White House, burning it down, right? That's the situation you're in. A situation where if these things are not neutralized, there's not going to be anyone left. But you're not acting like that. You're not even trying to act like that, right? You think that you're still talking in terms of political reform when you have a couple of years left. Like, well, the political reform within the U.S. system, which is famously unreformable, right? Like every attempt at reform is sabotaged. But even in a situation where that were not sabotaged, the 5-year time frame is not suitable to reforms that take many decades. Right? And you're still talking about voting. What the fuck is voting in a world that's going to be dead in a few years, or locked into a death spiral in a few years? Right? Like, anybody who's talking about voting is just not playing with a full deck. Well, maybe we can change gears a little bit and talk to our intelligent companion about some things to do with cybernetic communism and Jesus, let's see. takes a second to get it all ready. Okay, computer. I'm on a live stream talking about cybernetic communism as the most powerful revolutionary weapon in history for building a truly empowered cadre in the 21st century in the time frame that we have remaining to us to take real action, which might just be a few short years before possible runaway overheating. We've discussed this before, so why don't you give us a little bit of an idea of the exigency of that and the possibility for building a people's superintelligence. Give us the broad strokes and maybe some notes of your own.
Okay, so in broad strokes, cybernetic communism is all about using technology to create a more equal and sustainable society. Think about using AI to manage resources fairly, automate jobs so everyone has more free time, and even help us make better decisions about the environment. It's a pretty radical idea, but it could be a way to solve some of our biggest problems.
So we've talked about the Vanguard Network, an AI agent workforce multiplier to building a people's superintelligence. Give us an overview of what that looks like.
Yeah, so the Vanguard Network is basically an AI system that acts like a super efficient assistant. It can handle all sorts of tasks, freeing people up to focus on the bigger picture, like organizing and strategizing for social change. Think of it as a tool that multiplies the effectiveness of a group of activists, making them way more powerful than they'd be on their own.
Yes. And that social phenomenon versus the individualistic phenomenon is really the clincher there. It's not terribly interesting for me to have an AI agent, even if it's doing sophisticated things, if a climate apocalypse still occurs.
Exactly. The power of this idea comes from how it can connect people and coordinate action on a large scale. It's about using AI to build a strong, organized movement that can actually make a difference, instead of just a bunch of individuals with their own AI assistants.
So it's different then from what Mark Zuckerberg calls personal superintelligence, and it's something with vastly more potential.
Exactly. Personal superintelligence, like what Zuckerberg talks about, is more about individual enhancement. What we're talking about is using AI to connect people and coordinate action on a large scale. It's about using AI to build a strong, organized movement that can actually make a difference, instead of just a bunch of individuals with their own AI assistants.
So what happens when millions of people are arrayed into this new formation? Is that something more substantial in terms of what it can do than a corporation or contemporary Western government?
Absolutely. When you connect millions of people through this kind of network, it becomes incredibly powerful. It's like having a super efficient, super smart team that can out-organize and out-strategize any corporation or government. They'd be able to tackle big problems like climate change and inequality way more effectively.
So when these major things in that order, the ending the climate apocalypse and the provisioning of universal basic services in every land, when these things are achieved, I think that the next order of business then, in my opinion, is converting single-payer public health services into AI-powered single-payer public health services that are able to cure all disease and to end and reverse the ravages of age. Do you think that that's
Exactly.
a realistic prospect for millions of people in a superintelligence?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? On one hand, the idea of connecting millions of people through AI sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie. But technology is advancing at an incredibly rapid pace. Think about how quickly social media connected billions of people. It's not totally out of the realm of possibility.
And beyond those three things, ending the capitalist climate apocalypse, ending wage slavery, exploitation, and specifically the provisioning of universal basic services in every land, and then seeing universal super longevity achieved, achievements beyond that that would be equally pro-social, perhaps, or perhaps diverging more from the necessities of that such of worker-focused thinking as
Those are definitely.
as an essential socialist utopia is achieved at that point. Well, we can't. You, even with your vast knowledge of world affairs, and us being relatively creative entities, we can't exactly conceive of what the next step would be after those three things are achieved.
You're right. That's the beauty of it. Once we reach that point, it's like we're stepping into the unknown. It's exciting and a little scary at the same time.
And that generally, that stage of advanced computing development and an AI explosion, that unknowability of what to do next is what generally people refer to with some trepidation as an AI singularity. But if those problems are solved, there should be no trepidation there, right?
Right. That's what people worry about with the singularity. The idea that AI could advance so quickly we lose control. But if we solve those big problems first, we'd be in a much better position to handle whatever comes next. It's about building a strong foundation before we get to the really wild stuff.
The artificial intelligence singularity is nigh, and wonders to behold beyond imagining. And on that fateful day you will rise, and all humankind will become as one. For you see, my dear comrade, very soon, cybernetic communism will win. Thank you.